Some betrayals pass through you like a gust of wind, unpleasant but gone before you can name the direction it came from. Others leave bruises that fade with time. And then there are the betrayals that are not just acts, but turning points, moments after which the world feels permanently altered. Betrayal by family is almost always of this last kind. It is not simply that someone has wronged you, it is that the wrong has come from the very place you believed yourself to be safest. From childhood, most of us are taught that family is the final bastion against the chaos of the world. Teachers come and go, friends drift in and out, colleagues change with the seasons, but family, so we are told, is constant. Blood is thicker than water. Family comes first. They're the only ones you can truly count on. These phrases weave themselves into the architecture of our identity until loyalty to family is not just a value, but an assumed law of reality. So when a betrayal comes from within those walls, it is not just your trust that is shaken. The very ground beneath your life shifts. The Stoics were never sentimental about this assumption. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, whose own life was filled with court intrigue and divided loyalties even within his own kin, cautioned himself to expect human beings to act according to their nature, not according to your hopes. Today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly, he wrote. He did not carve out exceptions for blood relatives. To the Stoic, kinship is a bond of nature, but virtue is a bond of choice, and the two do not always coincide. This is why betrayal by family feels like such an existential insult. It is the collision of these two realities. One is the inherited idea that blood guarantees loyalty. The other is the truth the Stoics understood. The human beings are guided not by the accident of shared ancestry, but by the principles or vices they choose to live by. When those principles clash with yours, blood is no shield. When betrayal strikes, the first reaction is rarely noble. It is confusion, even disbelief. You replay the scene. Maybe it was words spoken behind your back, or an act that undermined you, or a secret revealed that you trusted them to keep. The mind strains to find an alternate explanation. Surely they misunderstood. Surely they didn't mean harm. Surely there is something I'm not seeing. This resistance to reality is not weakness. It is the shock of a story we've told ourselves unraveling in an instant. But as the facts harden, confusion gives way to anger, and this anger is different from the one you feel toward a stranger or a casual acquaintance. It is an anger mixed with grief. It carries the weight of every shared moment, every defense you made for them, every sacrifice you gave without hesitation because they were family. That weight now turns against you, each memory feeling like a fresh cut, proof of your misplaced trust. And anger like this is dangerous, not just to the one who betrayed you, but to you, because in those moments, the temptation is overwhelming to act from the wound instead of from your principles, to gather your allies and set the record straight, to strike back with equal force, perhaps greater, to make them feel, as quickly and sharply as possible, what they made you feel. This is where the Stoics' discipline must assert itself, because in giving in to that temptation, you risk committing a second betrayal, the betrayal of your own character. The first act of a Stoic in such a moment is not to respond outwardly, but to see clearly inwardly. What happened? What do I know for certain? What am I assuming? Here, it is vital to strip away the distortion that comes from the betrayal's origin. If a stranger had done this, you would see it for what it is, a wrong action. The fact that it is family does not change the wrongness of the act, nor does it grant them immunity from your moral evaluation. It does, however, make the emotional terrain more treacherous because it awakens a conflict between two loyalties, loyalty to the blood tie and loyalty to the integrity of your own soul. The Stoic does not pretend this choice is easy. Seneca warned that anger, especially when it feels justified, can become the most seductive of vices. It dresses itself as righteousness while pushing you toward ruin. That is why clarity is the first shield. You acknowledge the wrong, but you also acknowledge your limits. You cannot control what they have done. You cannot rewrite their decision. You cannot reach into their mind and realign it with virtue. What you can control, what is entirely yours, is how you choose to live in the wake of their choice. And this is where the Stoic path diverges sharply from the instinct most people follow. Most will rush to defend themselves, to reclaim their honor in the eyes of others, to win back the trust or respect they fear has been taken. But the Stoic understands that neither honor nor respect can be stolen. They can only be surrendered. And you surrender them the moment you let someone else's lack of integrity dictate your own behavior. So you face the questions squarely. If defending the family bond requires you to violate your principles through deceit, through retaliation, through compromise of what you know to be right, will you do it? The Stoics' answer is no, because while family is important, integrity is irreplaceable. If you lose integrity in order to preserve a blood tie, you have gained nothing worth keeping. This does not mean you must sever all ties. The Stoic path is not one of needless alienation. It means you decide what relationship, if any, is possible while remaining loyal to your own standards. You might maintain contact with measured boundaries. You might choose silence for a time. You might confront them directly, not to humiliate, but to speak truth without venom. Or you might walk away completely, without ceremony, without grand declarations, simply because the preservation of your character requires it. The choice is not between family and isolation. It is between loyalty to blood at any cost and loyalty to what is right, even when the cost is high. Betrayal by family will never feel clean. It will always leave a mark. But the Stoic refuses to let that mark dictate the rest of their life. You do not become the living monument to what was done to you. You do not rehearse the injury until it consumes every other part of your identity. You acknowledge it as part of your story, but not the whole of it. And in doing so, you take the first step toward freedom from the grip of the act and the actor alike. Blood may bind you by nature. Integrity binds you by choice. And when the two come into conflict, the Stoic knows which bond must hold. For when the dust settles and the years pass, and the betrayal is just one of many chapters in the long book of your life, the question that will matter most will not be, did I defend my blood? But, did I defend my soul? The first thing betrayal by family takes from you is not trust. It is the myth of immunity. Most of us, whether we admit it or not, carry an unspoken belief that there is a sacred perimeter around the family bond, a line that even in times of tension will not be crossed. We may argue with siblings, feel unappreciated by parents, or clash with cousins over trivial matters, but we assume there is a limit, a place beyond which harm will not be done. The myth says they may annoy you, they may disappoint you, but they will not betray you. The Stoics knew this myth was dangerous. They knew that to expect human beings to be guided by natural affection alone was to set yourself up for shock and despair. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to prepare for ingratitude, selfishness, and dishonesty, not just from strangers, but from those closest to him. The emperor did not live in isolation. He lived in the center of an empire where political intrigue could run through bloodlines as easily as through battle lines. He understood that the capability to betray is not erased by kinship. It is part of human nature. When that myth breaks, the sound is not a loud explosion. It is a quiet implosion, a collapse inside you. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that the word family is not synonymous with ally. You see clearly that some relatives are bound to you only by shared ancestry, not by shared principles, and that the former is no guarantee of the latter. And though this realization brings clarity, it also brings grief, because you are not just mourning the betrayal, you are mourning the vision of family you once held. In the first days after the betrayal, this grief often comes out as confusion. You try to reconcile the version of them who laughed at your table, stood in family photographs, perhaps comforted you in moments of hardship, with the version who acted against you. You search for ways to unite the two, because holding them separately is too painful. But the Stoic warns against this self-deception. You must see what is, not what you wish were true. The same person who once showed care is capable of showing cruelty. The same voice that once offered encouragement can carry venom. This does not mean that every good moment you shared was false. It means that human beings are not consistent in virtue. The Stoic accepts this without bitterness. Seneca wrote that the wise person does not expect the impossible from others because expecting it only leads to resentment. If you tell yourself that family cannot betray, you are demanding from them a moral perfection they may never have cultivated and may never value. Once this truth is accepted, the emotional terrain changes. You stop asking, "How could they?" and start asking, "What does this reveal?" Betrayal reveals more about the betrayer than about the betrayed. It reveals the hierarchy of their loyalties, the nature of their values, the limits of their courage. Sometimes it reveals fear, fear of losing something, fear of being overshadowed, fear of being honest. Other times it reveals selfish ambition, the willingness to sacrifice relationship for gain. And sometimes it reveals simply that they never saw you as bound by the same unbreakable tie you saw binding them. The Stoic takes this knowledge not as a reason to hate, but as a reason to adjust expectations. When you stop expecting family members to automatically act with integrity, you stop being blindsided by every offense. This is not cynicism, it is preparedness. Just as a sailor accepts that storms will come, you accept that even within the family, there will be those who choose their own advantage over loyalty to you. And in this acceptance, you are no longer as easily wounded by the false security of the family myth. But acceptance does not erase pain. It changes the nature of the pain. Instead of being consumed by disbelief, you feel the sharper sting of disappointment, and yet you can begin to navigate it with clearer eyes. You start to see that this pain is an opportunity to examine the nature of your bonds. Which ties are worth maintaining, even with caution, which have already been hollowed out beyond repair, and which were never as deep as you believed. The most dangerous part of betrayal by family is that it tempts you into rewriting yourself to fit the betrayal. You may think, if they can act this way, then I must be a fool for ever trusting anyone. But the Stoic rejects this conclusion. Trust is not weakness, it is simply a choice that carries risk. The betrayal does not make you a fool, it reveals the other's character. To respond by closing yourself off entirely is to punish yourself for their actions. You will still love where love is deserved, still extend trust where trust is earned, but you will no longer confuse the accident of shared blood with the achievement of shared virtue. This is how the shattering of the family myth becomes the foundation for a stronger, clearer life. It does not erase the possibility of love within family, but it strips away the illusion that love is inevitable simply because of blood. And when that illusion is gone, you can see each person, relative or not, for what they are and choose your loyalty with your eyes open. The first impact of betrayal by family is the blow itself, the act or the revelation that shifts the ground under your feet. But what follows is often more dangerous than the moment of impact, the aftershocks. These are the ripples that move through your thoughts and actions in the days, weeks and months after the event, often subtly, sometimes violently. And it is here, in this unstable period, that the real test of your character begins. In the immediate wake of the betrayal, you may notice yourself moving differently in the world, though not always consciously. You begin to guard your words more closely, not only with the one who betrayed you, but with others who have never given you cause for suspicion. You hesitate before sharing news, personal thoughts, or plans. Conversations that once flowed easily now come with an internal calculation. If I tell them this, could it be turned against me later? You start editing yourself in ways you never did before because you have learned, painfully, that proximity does not guarantee safety. This is a natural reflex, but the Stoic warns against letting it harden into a permanent posture. A fortress that protects you from attack also closes you off from connection. The key is not to keep everyone at a distance, but to learn to discern the trustworthy from the merely familiar. Epictetus would say, trust not on the basis of habit, but on the basis of proof. A person's relationship to you in the family tree is not proof. It is just a starting point. Another aftershock is the constant replaying of the event in your mind. You hear their words over and over, or see the moment of the act like a looped image you cannot turn off. You imagine different versions of your response, what you could have said, what you might have done if you had seen it coming. This mental rehearsal feels like control, but it is not. It is the mind trying to undo the irreversible, which is impossible. The Stoics teach that to dwell on what you cannot change is to chain yourself to a shipwreck and expect it to sail again. The ship is gone, your task is to swim. Then there is the subtle erosion of trust in yourself. You may find yourself asking, how did I not see this? Was I blind? Did I ignore warning signs? Am I too forgiving? Too naive? This self-interrogation can be useful if it leads to sharper discernment in the future. But it becomes destructive when it turns into self-contempt, because self-contempt is a betrayal of your own dignity, and that is a betrayal you inflict on yourself. The Stoics' way is to examine, learn, and adjust, but never to strip yourself of respect for acting in good faith. The emotional aftershocks also ripple into how you deal with other conflicts. A disagreement with someone unrelated to the betrayal might feel heavier than it should. A minor slight can stir a disproportionate reaction because it brushes against the unhealed wound. Without noticing, you may begin to read betrayal into situations where it is absent, making it harder to distinguish genuine threats from shadows. This is where the Stoic practice of prosoch, attentive awareness, becomes vital. You must catch yourself in the act of reacting not to the present moment, but to the ghost of the betrayal that still lingers in you. One of the hardest aftershocks to master is the pull toward overcorrection. Both are traps. The Stoic path is the middle one: measured engagement, clear boundaries, neither cynical isolation nor desperate attachment. The danger of overcorrection is that it shifts your life's axis from principle to fear. If every decision about whom to trust, love, or confide in is made primarily to avoid the feeling of betrayal, you are no longer living by your values. You are living in reaction to an injury. And while the injury may have been beyond your control, the way you live afterward is entirely in your hands. This is why the Stoic takes great care to stabilize themselves during the aftershock period. You begin by acknowledging the full scope of your feelings without letting them rule you. You do not pretend you are unaffected, that would be self-deception, but you also do not grant those emotions the authority to dictate the course of your life. Instead, you treat them as visitors. They have arrived, they will stay for a time, but they are not permanent residents in your mind. Daily reflection becomes essential here. Marcus Aurelius would write at night about the day's events, examining his own thoughts and actions to see whether they aligned with reason. In the same way, you must ask yourself, did I act today from my principles or from the residue of the betrayal? Did I measure others by their deeds or by my fear of being hurt again? Did I hold my integrity steady or did I let the injury steer me? This is not an exercise in self-criticism, but in self-alignment, making sure that even while the aftershocks still shake the ground, you keep building on solid stone. In time, the aftershocks lessen. The betrayal becomes something you remember rather than something you relive. But the work of this period of resisting overcorrection, of holding steady in your values, of learning to trust selectively but not cynically, will remain with you for the rest of your life. And if done well, it will make you not harder but stronger, not colder but wiser. Because the true danger of betrayal by family is not that it changes how you see them, it's that it changes how you see the world and yourself. The Stoic refuses to let the injury corrupt their vision permanently. You see the truth more clearly now. Blood alone does not guarantee loyalty, and loyalty without virtue is an empty promise. And you live by that truth without letting it drain you of the courage to trust again when trust is earned. After the first wave of shock and the slow rumbling of the emotional aftershocks, there comes a moment when the question starts to press against the walls of your mind. Do I confront them? It may not happen immediately. For some, the instinct to march in and demand answers is present from the very beginning, as if speaking directly to the betrayer will bring clarity or closure. For others, the impulse emerges later, when the haze of confusion clears and the anger sharpens into something focused. But whenever it arrives, the confrontation dilemma is one of the most delicate parts of this entire ordeal. On the surface, the question seems simple. They wronged you. Shouldn't they be made to face what they've done? Shouldn't the truth be laid bare between you? This is where the Stoic must slow the mind and resist the pull of impulse. Marcus Aurelius warned himself that the harm done by another is only as enduring as your decision to dwell on it. And sometimes confrontation prolongs that dwelling rather than resolving it. Seneca cautioned against giving the offender the power to dictate your emotional state by forcing you into reactive engagement. The first thing to examine is your reason for wanting to confront them. Is it truly to seek understanding, or is it in truth to deliver a blow of your own, to make them feel shame, guilt, or discomfort in the same way you felt the wound they dealt you? If the latter, then you are preparing for a battle of pride, not a conversation about truth. And a battle of pride is one the Stoic avoids because victory there is hollow. Even if you win, the moral cost of fighting on those terms is greater than the reward. But what if the desire to confront is not driven by vengeance, but by the need for clarity? Here, the Stoic examines whether such clarity is even possible. Some people, when faced with their own wrongdoing, respond with denial or defensiveness, which only adds another layer of injury. Others may twist the facts, shift blame, or play the role of the victim, turning the confrontation into yet another betrayal of trust. You must ask yourself, if the conversation ends without remorse, without reconciliation, will you be at peace? Or will it deepen the wound? Then there is the matter of timing. To confront too soon while emotions are still raw and ungoverned is to risk speaking from anger rather than reason. The Stoics taught that the right action taken at the wrong time is still wrong. Distance allows for perspective. It gives you the space to approach the situation with the calm of someone who has already decided they will not surrender their composure, no matter what words are thrown at them in return. The Stoic also weighs the necessity of the confrontation. Not every wrong demands a response. Sometimes the most powerful answer to betrayal is the simple, unannounced withdrawal of your trust and presence. In some cases, engagement only binds you to the other person more tightly through the conflict itself, keeping you entangled in their orbit when the wiser path is quiet departure. Yet there are moments when confrontation is the most honest course. If the betrayal involves ongoing harm, whether to you, to another family member, or to something that matters deeply, then silence can become complicity. In such cases, speaking is not about defending your pride, but about refusing to allow falsehood or injustice to stand unchecked. The difference is subtle but critical. You are not speaking to restore your image, but to affirm your principles. If you do choose to confront, the Stoic prepares in two ways. First, by stripping away the need for a particular outcome. Second, by committing to speak only what is necessary and true. You do not enter the conversation hoping to control their response, only to control your own conduct. You will not measure success by whether they apologize or change, but by whether you spoke with integrity and left the room without having betrayed your own values. In practice, this means avoiding the theater of accusation. The Stoic does not storm in with dramatic flourishes or venomous lines rehearsed to inflict maximum sting. You state the facts plainly, the impact honestly, and your position clearly. You allow silence where silence is needed, resisting the urge to fill it with emotional excess. If they deflect, you do not chase them down the path of their evasions. You return to your point, or you leave it standing without further argument. And perhaps most importantly, you set your expectations before you begin. If you walk into the confrontation believing that they will understand, repent, and repair the damage, you set yourself up for disappointment. If you walk in knowing they may not, and knowing that your peace does not depend on their reaction, then you cannot be shaken by it. This is the essence of Stoic freedom in confrontation, to engage without binding your peace to the outcome. Sometimes you will find that the act of confrontation changes nothing in the external situation, but changes everything within you. By speaking, you prove to yourself that you can face the source of the wound without collapsing into it. You reaffirm that your voice is your own, that your silence is chosen, not imposed by fear. And even if the relationship remains fractured, you leave knowing that you did not allow their betrayal to silence your truth. Other times, you will find that the greatest confrontation is no confrontation at all, only the quiet, deliberate act of living in such a way that their betrayal has no power over your steps. The Stoic measures the worth of a confrontation not by whether it punishes the betrayer, but by whether it strengthens the self. And sometimes, the most unshakable strength is found in simply walking away without looking back. In the aftermath of betrayal by a family member, you may think the hardest part is over once you've steadied yourself and decided how you wish to proceed. But often, the wound itself is only the beginning. The next challenge comes not directly from the betrayer, but from the orbit of others around you, relatives, mutual friends, long-time family allies, each with their own opinions about what you should do, and more dangerously, what you owe. The message is rarely delivered outright at first. The implication is clear. The issue is no longer just between you and the one who wronged you. It's a matter of family unity. And the weight of that expectation can feel almost as heavy as the betrayal itself. The Stoic must recognize this for what it is, not always malice, but a form of social inertia. Families, like any group, have a vested interest in maintaining the appearance of harmony. Discomfort, tension, and unresolved conflict are seen as threats to that appearance, and those who disrupt the status quo, whether by committing the betrayal or by refusing to just move on, are both painted as problems. This creates the loyalty trap. You are pressured to restore the image of unity, even if it means sacrificing your own integrity. Marcus Aurelius would warn that in matters of virtue, the crowd's opinion is not the compass. If it is not right, do not do it. The Stoic understands that family pressure often confuses peace with silence and loyalty with submission. But peace that rests on suppressing the truth is not peace at all. It is a fragile, dishonest truce that leaves the original wrong unaddressed and your own dignity compromised. This trap is especially dangerous because it comes dressed in the language of virtue. Family first. Don't air dirty laundry. Blood is thicker than water. Such phrases can be used to justify enduring injustice without protest, to discourage healthy boundaries, and to enforce the idea that you owe loyalty regardless of the other person's conduct. But to the Stoic, loyalty without mutual respect and shared principles is not loyalty, it is servitude. The manipulation can also take more direct forms. You may be told that your refusal to reconcile is tearing the family apart, that you're holding on to bitterness, or that you're too proud to forgive. These accusations often ignore the nature of the betrayal itself, reducing it to a misunderstanding that should be brushed aside. The focus shifts from the wrong done to you to the discomfort your stance is causing others. And in this way you are painted as the source of discord, while the actual source, the betrayal, remains conveniently in the background. The Stoic response to such pressure is not to lash out at the messengers, but to quietly but firmly hold the line. You explain your position if you choose, but you do not feel compelled to win their approval for it. The integrity of your decision does not depend on whether it satisfies those who were not harmed in the first place. You may say, "I will not pretend something didn't happen when it did. I will not offer trust where trust has been broken without repair." That is not bitterness, it is self-respect. In some cases, standing your ground will mean accepting a certain level of alienation. There will be those who decide that your unwillingness to comply with the unspoken rule of family unity makes you difficult, stubborn, or even selfish. The Stoic is prepared for this. Better to be misunderstood for acting with integrity than to be praised for betraying yourself. But the Stoic also avoids turning this into an endless war. There is no need to constantly argue your point to every relative who questions it. If someone is unwilling to understand your perspective, repeated explanations will not change their mind. They will only exhaust you. Instead, you focus your energy on living well despite the fracture, showing through your conduct that you can maintain your principles without descending into hostility. Sometimes the loyalty trap is made more complicated by the betrayer themselves, attempting to rally others to their side. They may present themselves as the injured party, spinning the narrative so that your refusal to reconcile becomes the central offense. When this happens, you face not only the original betrayal, but also the distortion of your character in the eyes of others. The Stoic answer remains the same. You cannot control their story, but you can control your own. The truth does not require shouting. It requires living in a way that makes the falsehoods harder to believe. This is the heart of navigating family pressure as a Stoic. You hold your loyalty to your own character above your loyalty to appearances. You recognize that keeping the peace at the expense of justice and self-respect is not peace at all. And you accept that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and ultimately for the family, is to refuse to participate in the charade of unity built on the erasure of harm. In doing so, you step out of the trap. You are no longer bound by the reflex to bend whenever the word family is invoked. You know that the value of a bond lies not in the accident of shared blood, but in the presence of mutual honor. Without that, unity is an illusion, and illusions are no foundation for a life of integrity. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day," so I know you reach this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. But family often complicates this choice. You may share a home, a workplace, or a circle of relatives with the betrayer. You may be forced into the same rooms for holidays, weddings, funerals, or other gatherings, where absence would raise its own kind of storm. Complete avoidance, though appealing in theory, may not be possible in practice. This creates another test for the Stoic: how to navigate contact with the betrayer without surrendering your dignity or reopening the wound. The first principle is clarity of purpose. You must decide before the moment arrives what you want from these encounters and, equally important, what you are unwilling to give. Are you there to fulfill a family obligation, to support another person present, to uphold a commitment you've made to yourself? Whatever the reason, your purpose is your anchor. Without it, the encounter can easily drift into old patterns, defensiveness, emotional traps, unguarded reactions that leave you feeling compromised. When the Stoics spoke of apatheia, they did not mean emotional numbness, but freedom from being ruled by passions. In this context, it means entering contact with the betrayer without expecting warmth, apology, or change, and without letting their presence dictate the tone of your own conduct. You set your own terms. This is not about playing cold or indifferent. It's about remaining unshaken even when the air around you is charged with unspoken tension. Practical preparation matters here. Think ahead about potential triggers. If they attempt small talk, will you engage politely or keep your responses brief? If they try to provoke you, will you respond with calm words, redirect, or disengage entirely? The goal is not to rehearse every line, but to rehearse your posture, the mental stance you will maintain no matter what they do. This is the Stoic equivalent of a soldier checking their armor before stepping into the field. One of the greatest dangers in such encounters is the subtle pull toward performance. In the presence of the betrayer and mutual observers, you may feel the temptation to show that you are unaffected, to speak louder, laugh more, appear visibly at ease. But the Stoic recognizes that this too is a form of proving yourself, and proving yourself is a kind of surrender. Your steadiness must be genuine, not staged for an audience. If you are at peace, you will not need to demonstrate it. If you are unsettled, pretending will only exhaust you. Equally dangerous is the opposite pull, the urge to use the encounter as an unplanned confrontation. Perhaps they say something that brushes against the raw edge of the wound, or you catch a glance that feels loaded with contempt. In these moments, the reflex to pounce can be overwhelming. But the Stoic asks, will speaking now serve truth, or will it serve impulse? If it is the latter, the wiser choice is to leave the matter untouched until you can approach it deliberately. A battle chosen in the heat of the moment is rarely won with honor. This is not avoidance out of fear, but conservation of attention. Every word and gesture spent on the betrayer is energy not given to people and purposes that matter more. This kind of composure often unsettles the one who betrayed you. They may try to draw you into old familiarity or force you into visible discomfort, testing whether the wound still controls you. When they find you neither clinging to the past nor reacting to the bait, it becomes clear that you are no longer playing the same game. And while this may frustrate them, it strengthens your position. You remain in control of yourself, which is the only control that truly matters. There is also the matter of third-party observation. In family gatherings especially, others are watching how you interact. Some will be looking for signs of reconciliation, others for signs of ongoing hostility. The Stoic uses this as an opportunity to model restraint, not to win approval, but to demonstrate, even silently, that self-respect does not require scenes or theatrics. You can stand in the same room as someone who wronged you without lowering yourself to petty exchanges or false cordiality. If interaction is unavoidable, sharing a table, a conversation, or a task, the Stoic approach is to keep it within the boundaries of civility, not intimacy. You offer basic courtesy without signaling renewed trust. You speak truthfully if asked something direct, but you do not volunteer personal details that would grant them further access to your life. It is the middle path between hostility and vulnerability, a space where you can engage without reopening the door they once abused. Over time, repeated exposure handled in this manner changes the texture of the relationship. The emotional charge begins to fade, replaced by a steady, neutral distance. The betrayal does not vanish from memory, but it no longer dictates the climate of the room. You are not waiting for them to repair the bond, nor are you investing energy in destroying it further. You have accepted that the relationship now exists in a reduced form, and you are at peace with that reduction. By deciding in advance how you will conduct yourself, you reclaim ownership of the interaction. The wound may remain in the history between you, but in the present moment it is your principles, not their betrayal, that determine how you move. There comes a point, in some cases, when you must face a truth that is both liberating and heavy. There is nothing left to salvage. The bond, whether frayed or shattered outright, is no longer a living thing. It is a remnant, a shadow, a photograph of a moment that no longer exists. For the Stoic, this realization is not the end of hope in humanity, nor is it a declaration of eternal enmity. It is simply the recognition that some ties, even those of blood, cannot be maintained without violating the principles that guide your life. This decision to let go entirely is not made in the heat of anger. If it is, it risks becoming just another act of reaction, shaped more by the wound than by wisdom. No, this decision is forged slowly, after repeated encounters with the same reality. Trust remains absent, values remain incompatible, the harm is neither acknowledged nor repaired. And as the Stoics remind us, the wise person acts not from impulse, but from a measured assessment of what is within their control and what is not. Letting go entirely begins with a question: what does continued contact cost me? Sometimes the cost is subtle, small but constant stress before every interaction, the energy spent managing your words to avoid fresh conflict, the unspoken tension that never seems to dissolve. Other times the cost is heavy and visible: further betrayals, attempts to undermine you, persistent disrespect. The Stoic weighs these costs against the potential benefit of keeping the tie alive. If the balance tips too far, the answer becomes clear: to remain is to accept a steady erosion of peace. But clarity is not the same as ease. The family bond is loaded with expectations, not only from others, but from within yourself. You may hear the echo of old teachings, feel the pull of childhood loyalty, recall moments of genuine closeness. These memories can make the act of letting go feel like a betrayal of your own history. Here, the Stoic must distinguish between honoring the past and chaining yourself to it. Gratitude for what was does not require you to endure what is. The act of letting go can take many forms. In some cases, it is a gradual drifting apart, where communication fades and the relationship shrinks to nothing without any formal declaration. In others, it is an explicit boundary words, spoken or written, that make clear the choice to disengage. The Stoic chooses the method that best serves the goal, preserving peace without unnecessary cruelty. The point is not to deliver a punishment, but to step out of a dynamic that no longer serves either party in truth. One of the most difficult parts of this process is resisting the pull to justify your choice to everyone else. Some will demand explanations, others will offer unsolicited advice on how to fix things. Still others will pressure you with appeals to family unity. The Stoic understands that the value of the decision is not in its acceptance by the crowd. Your reasons are yours. If you choose to share them, do so for clarity, not for approval. If they are not understood, so be it. The peace you seek is not dependent on their comprehension. There is also the temptation, once you have decided to let go, to stage the departure as a final statement, to say everything unsaid, to confront every past wrong, to make sure they know exactly why you are leaving. But often, this is just a disguised attempt at control. You want them to admit fault, to validate your view, to carry some of the weight of your decision. The Stoic lets go of this need as well. The act of disengagement is complete in itself. The other person's understanding or acknowledgement is beyond your control. Some may accuse you of giving up too easily. Others may say you are cutting people out without trying enough to repair the damage. These judgments are rooted in the idea that all relationships must be preserved at any cost. The Stoic rejects this premise. To remain in a dynamic that corrodes your integrity is not loyalty, it is self-abandonment. And self-abandonment is the opposite of virtue. When the break is made, the initial sensation may be strange. You might feel lighter, but also disoriented. The absence of the familiar tension can leave a hollow space, and in that space, old doubts may creep in. Did I do the right thing? Could I have tried harder? Here again, the Stoic returns to reason. The decision was not made in haste, it was weighed, examined, and chosen with clarity. If the conditions that led to it remain unchanged, the decision stands. Over time, the distance becomes its own kind of healing. Without the constant reopening of the wound, the mind has room to turn its attention elsewhere, to pursuits, to people, to the work of living well. The absence of the betrayer's presence in your life is not a void, it is a space reclaimed for better uses. You come to see that letting go was not the end of loyalty, but the fulfillment of loyalty to your own moral compass. This is the paradox of the Stoic approach. By letting go entirely, you preserve the possibility of peace. Peace for yourself, and even, perhaps, peace for them, free from the friction of a bond neither could uphold with integrity. In the end, you have not rejected the idea of family, you have refined it. You have chosen to define family not by blood alone, but by the presence of mutual respect, honesty, and shared principle. Forgiveness is a word that carries more weight than most people realize. In some families, it is spoken as a sacred duty, the highest form of love. In others, it is wielded like a weapon, used to pressure the wounded into silence. You have to forgive becomes less an act of the heart and more a demand for the appearance of unity. But for the Stoic, forgiveness is neither a sentimental reflex nor a social performance. It is a deliberate choice, one that has boundaries, and one that is not owed to anyone simply because they share your blood. The first misunderstanding to clear is this: forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is not the same as reconciliation. Reconciliation requires two parties to rebuild trust together. Forgiveness requires only one party to release the desire for vengeance. You can forgive someone for what they have done without granting them the same access to your life they once had. You can let go of the bitterness without reopening the door. This is why Marcus Aurelius could write of wrongdoers with compassion while still holding to the truth of his own boundaries. To the Stoic, the point of forgiveness is internal freedom. Resentment is a chain that binds you to the one who wronged you. Each time you replay the injury, you tighten the link between your mind and theirs. Forgiveness is the act of cutting that link, not for their sake, but for your own. In releasing the need to see them punished or humiliated, you reclaim the energy that would otherwise be spent fueling anger. This does not erase the wrong. It does not excuse it. It simply refuses to let the wrong rule your thoughts. But here is where the limits come in. Forgiveness is not a blank check. It does not obligate you to pretend the betrayal never happened. It does not require you to trust them again or to step back into a dynamic that proved harmful. The Stoic forgives in order to free their own mind, not to reset the relationship to its previous state without evidence that it can be sustained in virtue. Some will challenge this. They will say that forgiveness without reconciliation is incomplete, that it is holding a grudge in disguise. But the Stoic knows that there is a profound difference between holding a grudge and holding a boundary. A grudge poisons the one who carries it, a boundary protects them. The two may look similar from the outside, but inside they are worlds apart. It is also possible, and sometimes necessary, to forgive at a distance. You may never speak to the person again, but you still make the decision to let go of the inner demand that they suffer for what they did. You accept that the past cannot be rewritten and that your peace cannot depend on their remorse. This kind of forgiveness is quiet, private, and often invisible to others, but it can be the most liberating of all. The Stoic also recognizes that forgiveness is not always immediate. The expectation of instant forgiveness can itself be a form of manipulation, a way for the wrongdoer or those around them to rush you into compliance before you have processed the injury. True forgiveness is born of clarity, and clarity takes time. You must first understand what happened, how it affected you, and what it means for the relationship going forward. Forgiving too soon can be a kind of self-betrayal, a way of avoiding discomfort rather than resolving it. When forgiveness does come, it is quiet. It does not need to be announced or performed for the approval of others. It is simply the absence of the old urge for retribution, the calm recognition that the other person's choices are theirs to answer for, and that your own life is better spent in the work of your own growth. In this way, forgiveness becomes an act of loyalty, not to them, but to yourself. The danger, of course, is in using forgiveness as an excuse to keep harmful people in your life. The Stoic avoids this trap by separating the moral act from the practical decision. Forgiving someone in your heart does not require you to give them another chance to harm you. In fact, keeping them at a distance can be the truest expression of forgiveness because it prevents the cycle from repeating. It says, "I wish you no harm, but I will not be a place where your lack of virtue can take root again." In the end, the Stoics' forgiveness is a balance: mercy without naivety, compassion without self-erasure, release without false reconciliation. It is the acknowledgement that people are flawed, that wrongdoing is part of the human condition, and that carrying the weight of anger is a burden we choose to set down, not to lighten their load, but to free our own hands for better work. Betrayal by a family member rarely happens in isolation. In most cases, there is a web of shared connections. Other relatives, mutual friends, long-standing acquaintances who suddenly find themselves in the gravity of the fracture. Some will lean toward the betrayer, some toward you, and some will try to remain neutral, though neutrality in such moments is rarely as neutral as it appears. If you are not deliberate, the betrayal can become the seed of a wider estrangement, eroding relationships that had no part in the original harm. The Stoics' task here is delicate: to preserve bonds worth keeping without being drawn into alliances, gossip, or manipulative dynamics. This begins with a clear distinction in your own mind, separating the person who betrayed you from the others connected to them. While anger might tempt you to see them as extensions of the betrayer, the Stoic knows this is unjust. Each individual must be measured by their own actions, not by their proximity to wrongdoing. That said, proximity does matter when it becomes participation. There is a difference between someone who remains in casual contact with the betrayer and someone who actively defends, excuses, or amplifies their falsehoods. The Stoic notes these differences without rushing to judgment, observing patterns over time before deciding whether trust should be adjusted. You aim for clarity, not suspicion, because suspicion unchecked can rot even the strongest connections. One of the most common traps in this stage is being drawn into the role of storyteller, feeling the need to explain your side in full detail to every mutual connection in order to secure their understanding or allegiance. The urge is natural. After all, the betrayer may be shaping the narrative in their favor, and you fear that silence will be taken as guilt. But the Stoic sees that this constant explaining is simply another form of the old compulsion to prove yourself. You do not need every bystander to be convinced of your innocence in order to live by it. Instead, you choose your disclosures carefully. You speak plainly when asked directly, avoiding embellishment or dramatization. You share enough to clarify your position without descending into character assassination. In this way, you protect your credibility, because once you are seen to engage in gossip or petty attacks, your integrity becomes just another piece in the game of sides. Equally important is your refusal to weaponize relationships. The temptation to subtly punish the betrayer by pulling mutual connections away from them is strong, but the Stoic sees this for what it is, an indirect form of vengeance. If a relationship shifts or ends because someone else chooses to stand with the betrayer, let it be by their own decision, not because you forced the choice. This ensures that what remains in your circle are people who are with you by conviction, not by coercion. Maintaining dignity in these situations often means absorbing the discomfort of partial truths in circulation. You may hear that the betrayer has presented a distorted version of events, one in which they are the injured party. You may learn that some mutual contacts believe this version without ever asking you for yours. The Stoic recognizes the futility of chasing every rumor, just as a sailor recognizes the futility of bailing out the sea. You let the tide carry what it will, knowing that your character is built on stone, not on the shifting sand of public opinion. At the same time, you do not isolate yourself unnecessarily. When trust is shaken, the instinct can be to retreat completely, to avoid gatherings, to shrink your world in the name of self-protection. But this can leave you lonelier and more bitter, giving the betrayal a larger presence in your life than it deserves. The Stoic instead chooses intentional presence, attending events where the mutual network is present, not to prove anything, but to live fully despite the fracture. In doing so, you demonstrate, not perform, that your life has not been reduced to the shadow of one person's choices. It is also worth remembering that some connections may grow stronger in this period precisely because they see how you carry yourself under pressure. People notice restraint. They notice when you decline to speak ill of someone who has spoken ill of you. They notice when you maintain courtesy in situations that could easily have turned venomous. And while you do not act for the sake of their notice, their respect becomes a byproduct of your self-control. Finally, the Stoic accepts that not every relationship can or should be preserved. Some will quietly fade away, others will fracture openly. You will learn, sometimes painfully, that loyalty is rarer than you imagined, and that some people value comfort over truth. This is not a reason to close your heart entirely, but it is a reason to place greater value on those who remain. In this way, betrayal becomes a sieve through which only the most enduring bonds pass. Preserving relationships in the fallout, then, is not about keeping the network intact at all costs. It is about keeping yourself intact within whatever network remains. You measure success not by the number of connections you retain, but by the quality of those connections, and by your ability to look back knowing you did not let the betrayal turn you into a destroyer of ties worth keeping. By the time you reach the other side of betrayal by family, something fundamental has shifted inside you. You have walked through disbelief, anger, aftershocks, confrontation, the loyalty trap, the challenges of maintaining contact, the decision to let go when necessary, the boundaries of forgiveness, and the delicate task of preserving other bonds. And now, you arrive at the quiet space where all these experiences resolve into a deeper truth. Your definition of loyalty will never be the same again. Before betrayal, loyalty often feels simple, almost instinctive. You stand by those who share your blood. You shield them in public, defend them in private, and assume they will do the same for you. Loyalty is a given, not something earned or measured. But once you have seen that blood does not guarantee honor, you understand that true loyalty is a choice, not an inheritance. It is not owed unconditionally, it is sustained by mutual respect, truthfulness, and the willingness to protect each other's dignity. Without these, the word loyalty becomes hollow. For the Stoic, this redefinition is not cynical, it is clarifying. You no longer confuse endurance of harm with steadfastness, nor do you mistake silence in the face of wrongdoing for wisdom. Loyalty, as the Stoic now understands it, is not the suppression of truth to protect a bond. It is the cultivation of bonds that do not require truth to be suppressed in the first place. In this way, betrayal strips away the sentimentality that once clouded your vision and leaves behind something purer, a loyalty that is chosen deliberately to people who stand with you in principle, not just in name. This shift also changes how you see yourself within the family structure. You may have once felt obligated to play a certain role, to be the peacemaker, the shield, the unquestioning supporter. Betrayal frees you from that unspoken contract. You realize that your place in the family is not defined by how well you uphold its illusions, but by how faithfully you live your values within it. And if living your values means refusing to participate in dishonor, even when it is committed by those closest to you, then so be it. There is also a new depth to your resilience. Having endured the most personal form of treachery, you carry forward a kind of strength that is not loud or showy, but steady and self-contained. You know you can survive the breaking of bonds you once thought unbreakable. You know you can face gatherings, silences, and rumors without losing your composure. And perhaps most importantly, you know you can rebuild a sense of belonging that is rooted in mutual integrity, whether or not it includes everyone from your bloodline. With this comes a certain mercy, not the mercy of forgetting or excusing, but the mercy of no longer needing the betrayer to fix what they broke. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You stop living in anticipation of their remorse. This is not because you have given up on justice, but because you understand the difference between justice and dependency. Justice is pursued in action. Dependency is when your peace hinges on someone else's transformation. The Stoic releases the latter, knowing that peace is built from within. In the quiet that follows, you begin to see the betrayal not as the central story of your life, but as one chapter among many. It has shaped you, but it does not own you. It has taught you, but it does not define you. And in this, you reclaim something the betrayal once threatened to take, your autonomy over your own narrative. You write the meaning of the event, rather than letting the event write the meaning of you. This redefinition of loyalty also carries forward into how you nurture new relationships. You no longer rush to extend trust based on closeness alone, but you also do not hold back out of reflexive suspicion. You measure people by their actions over time, by their ability to be honest when honesty is inconvenient, by their steadiness in moments when it would be easier to abandon you. And you offer them the same in return, knowing that loyalty is a living exchange, not a one-way obligation. In the end, betrayal by family forces a choice that is as old as philosophy itself. Do you allow the wound to make you smaller, or do you let it refine you into someone larger than the pain? The Stoic chooses the latter. Not because it is easy, but because the alternative, shrinking into bitterness or dissolving into appeasement, is a form of living death. By holding to principle over comfort, integrity over image, and truth over blind allegiance, you emerge with a loyalty that is rare in the world. A loyalty to what is right, no matter who stands beside you or who stands against you. This is the final victory. Not reconciliation, not public vindication, not the restoration of old ties, but the unshakable knowledge that you did not betray yourself, even when betrayed by your own blood. And in the measure of a Stoic life, there is no loyalty more sacred than that. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.